Content warning. The following video contains material that may be harmful or traumatizing to some audiences. I do bring up sensitive topics around mental health, borderline personality disorder, discrimination, stereotypes of having a personality disorder. I do talk about, in passing, as part of the symptoms, content related to suicide, suicidal ideation. There are no descriptions in it, but still, the words themselves in the course of a conversation or being reminded about having said symptoms could be triggering. So please be careful. Thank you for listening. I've done a video, and it was a clickbait video. Now, Katie Joy pretends to support and uplift women, and especially women who are connected with Jim Bob Duggar, so it might be their daughters. She assumes that her daughters are still tethered to their father and their father's beliefs. Now, that might be true in some instances, but her latest, what I would call dig at Joy Forsyth, I found it especially disgusting among everything else that she does on this platform. Now, I watched that video where Joy did a clothing haul. And when she says, oh, Joy did a stripping for Instagram. Oh, Joy, this. She still thinks in her tiny brain that Joy Forsyth is still tethered to her father and her father's beliefs. Now, one of Joy's more recent videos, she talked about, I think it was her question and answer video she made recently, where she talked about how she came to the decision of wearing pants, because I think someone had asked her about that. Now, it was a process for Joy. I don't understand it, but it was her own process. It was something she discussed with her husband. They went according to their beliefs. And I mean, Joy has said in a very respectful way, in her own way, and I'm paraphrasing here, perhaps in her videos, that her beliefs are different from her parents' beliefs in some respects. That is pretty much obvious. I'm not surprised, because Joy is an individual. Joy is intelligent, despite what Katie Joy thinks. And Joy has, in many ways, evolved and become her own person. Joy is mature because she saw the need for mental health therapy. Things were critical in her life. And I imagine that came with a lot of decision making, going through a lot herself. And it's hard when you're going through a lot yourself to understand sometimes what it is that you need. But she recognized that and decided to get treatment for it. And that's a very mature thing. She set a good example for her children by doing that, showing that yes, sometimes we don't always feel well, but we get the help that we need, and her children will feel more secure as a result of that. I think. That's my opinion. Joy in the past has talked about developing interests that she might have had some interests or didn't have them, but wanted to develop those. And I think she's understanding that as she's growing older. reflecting on her own life, what she needs for her life now. She's entitled to do that as a person, as a woman. And I think that, you know, Joy is evolving emotionally. And she's still, I mean, she's still a very, very young woman, very young woman. And she is going to continue to evolve. We don't stop really developing throughout our lives. People are going to school or going back to school in their 80s and 90s. So this whole ages thing that we're either too young, too young to know what we're talking about, which is nonsense because Joy is an example of that, or we're too old to learn, which is also nonsense. So Joy is trying to make a life for herself. She's getting into sponsorships, getting into, you know, she does. She's doing some things to help herself and her family. And then you have Katie Joy sits there making clickbait videos. And the reason why I watched the video is because I saw a couple of posts from people I follow who also do Katie Joy content. So I wanted to go back to the original source to see it for myself so that I can have my own opinion. And lo and behold, she makes this ridiculous, scathing caption and then pretends to support Joy in her decision. Like Joy made this decision, this dramatic decision to break away from the cult, or she made this decision to do this. To me, it's not even newsworthy because Joy herself reports her experiences on her own YouTube. You can see her and her Instagram, social media. You can see her evolution and progress, or evolution, or her development and progress as um, she gets older, she matures, as she's well into motherhood now. So there are other sets of experiences she has. She's received treatment or is still receiving treatment from her postpartum challenges and all of those things. So in Katie Joy's mind, somebody like this is still tethered to their father. And then all of a sudden it was like this thunderbolt hit, life-changing experience, because Katie Joy herself is so stagnant in her own immaturity in life that anybody who dares to become independent maybe still holds on to certain beliefs she disapproves of, but still makes a life for themselves she resents. It challenges everything that Katie understands about the world, which isn't much according to Katie Joy's own behavior and words. That none of these women are doing this, and that it had to be some kind of striking, weird type of situation for them to change their mind. When for Joy, it was every decision she made, there was a discussion, pros and cons, which I think is a mature way of handling decisions. Now, some people do make stark changes, but Katie Joy just focuses. She resents other women who decide to make a life for themselves. And if it's not in the way that she views the world, she trashes them. And I think there is some emotional investment that she has in this. I mean, I thought maybe at first that Katie Joy was trolling or just talking out of her ass. Well, she does, but I think she's emotionally invested in people's downfall. She expects people to be a certain way. And when they don't turn out that way, they don't uphold her sense of rigid black and white thinking or her own personal dogma of how people should live based on her own ignorance. I do not see people like Joy Forsyth being in a cult. She does not, I mean, she doesn't openly express that behavior, but there's nothing to indicate that she is in a cult given some of the healthy decisions that I see her making or that I see her talking about. But I'm just an observer. Like I said, I'm not an expert in any of this. This is just my opinion. Katie Joy has a lot of growing up to do. Now she's attacking Mary because everybody else is. Mary from Sister Wives. I don't know. I know some of the backstory of the public version of Mary. I don't know what Mary is doing for her business. Some people say it's a scam. Some people, and I question, what do you mean? How is it a scam? And I asked that. Hopefully I'll get an answer. But whatever is the case at this point, and I'm happy to retract, but if Mary is monetizing her experiences, I don't see what the problem is. Okay. I know that there are a lot of people who have charged for master classes and never delivered. And they're popular people. If you join my club or community, you'll have, you'll get this perk or that perk. Everybody should watch out what they spend their money on, especially with social media influencers or anybody really. So it's not a dig against Mary. It's just that's people should question. I mean, is this worth my money? What am I actually going to get? So yes, it's good to be cautious about that, and I would never do that. But let's I want to put that aside for a moment, that if Mary wants to um, evolve as a person, how she does that is entirely up to her. And I mean, even Mary has herself, if I understand her correctly, in her own words that she has published on social media, that it's a process. It's a process. So there isn't this. Sometimes we get those epiphanies, or we get those. Sometimes life puts us where we have to change ourselves. But I mean, it it takes a while to move on and do different things, live a different life, And I think Mary is right that there are trolls who are making her life miserable. That is true, and Katie Joy is one of them. Katie Joy contributes to that. I don't think there's an ounce of dishonesty. She doesn't have to declare that her husband was a toxic, abusive, whatever Katie claims. That's up to Mary to disclose, not up to Katie Joy. Now, Katie Joy has an opinion about it, but Katie Joy is not reporting anything to dismantle cultism or cults. That's not it. Katie Joy is just shooting her mouth off or just offering commentary points. That's all it is. It's up to Mary to come to that conclusion herself, and maybe through this project she's doing she'll find that. Now I don't know what the what the business point of this is. That still remains in my mind. But as far as Mary talking about her experiences, she doesn't. She can focus on whatever aspect of toxicity she's experiencing on her own terms, and she'll come to that realization on her own. Katie Joy doesn't know what happened in that marriage other than what she's seen from, reported by other reporters or commentators. I don't even think Katie's watched the show herself. She just makes commentary and makes up shit as she goes along. I would not classify their belief system as a cult. The cult has a very clear definition of that. I know Suzanne has made a video about what cults are, and Suzanne would know firsthand. So, it's my opinion that Katie Joy resents any woman who wants to move along, or anybody who wants to move along with their lives. Because what does she have to focus on? It takes the focus off of her own stagnation, her own emotional stagnation, her own personal stagnation. And mind you, she does set herself up to fail. Katie Joy, that is. She does put her own foot in her own mouth. And to me, that is the hallmark of a very emotionally disturbed person. I'm not saying Katie Joy can't have opinions about things, but Katie Joy does not have a real sense of who and what she is because she has no identity of her own. And it makes her possibly feel envious of others who do. I mean, look at all the so-called friends she said she's had with all of these higher profile people that have been turned to shit, either because she was delusional about that connection or lying about it. Katie Joy, I don't think understands what friendship is. Somebody or something along the way in her life stopped that development of relating to others. And problems with relationships like that, not making good choices about them, ruining them, sabotaging them, is indicative of emotional instability, in my layman's perspective, as somebody with emotional instability. So I'm not surprised that a lot of what she does, a lot of what motivates her to do these kinds of things is based on that, her own frustration with herself, or it's a way to deflect away from who she is. Yes, she's making money. Yes, she is particularly deceptive and nasty and greedy. But I think she is one of the most insecure people on this side of the platform to make content, in my opinion. Okay, this is the second part of this, and it's a very difficult one for me to do because it reminds me of my own struggles with mental health challenges. Now, I will do my best to just stick with what's in the screenshot, but I will dive into a little bit of my own background just so you understand where I'm coming from. And as always, this is based on my opinion as a layperson and somebody who's been through this. Now, this is a conversation screen grab provided by Balls 2.0 over on Instagram, and I also follow Balls on X, formerly Twitter, now that I have revamped my Twitter account, or I should say I should resurrect it because I haven't participated using that account in quite some time. All right. So I have to be honest, I don't know where this conversation originated from. I'm sure it was around the time that she was getting a lot of flack about her Garrison Brown coverage and the stuff going on with 7M. But without context, I can't really know where Katie Joy is emotionally at this point, because since Katie Joy does react to these things impulsively and emotionally, and she makes up stuff as she goes along to kind of explain away some things or deflect attention from her behavior or relative ignorance, I'm assuming this is one of those times and that she's under a lot of stress with what's going on. But like I said, without context, I really don't know. So I'm going to take some pieces out of this that were important to me because she brings up things about personality disorders and her own challenges with mental health. Now, I'm not here to challenge whether or not she has mental health issues. As a person watching her behavior, someone like me who has a lot of things going on psychologically and emotionally, it's easy for me to spot some things in other people. Okay? It's easier for me to see that. So that's where I'm coming from with this. And until I get the full context, I'm just going to focus on what's in front of me right now. All right. Now, it starts off, what is DBT? What's DBT? So I like this, the way that this was set up, because DBT is such an important tool in emotional stability, learning self-control, making wise decisions, because when we're not ruled by our emotional or erratically emotional um, upheavals or navigation of the world, we tend to make better decisions. And when I say we, I'm talking about people like me who have emotional instability. Now, according to CAMH.Canada, or CA, dialectical behavior therapy is an evidence-based model of therapy that helps people learn and use new skills and strategies that they build lives that they feel are worth living. Cleveland Clinic, this is just very general definition. Um, there is an overview on Cleveland Clinic. I will post that link in. They state that dialectical behavior therapy, I say training because to me it is like you're training your mind to do a different thing, but it is therapy because it works in a group setting. Sometimes there is DBT therapy that's done individually, and my therapist and I had talked about that, but it it, it would have it would have taken away time for me. It's better if I worked in a group setting because I could relate to others, and she thought that would be important, and I agreed with that, because having a focus like that and trying to do the other cognitive work, especially when I'm trying to really bring up some truths I don't want to face about myself or my mental illnesses, it takes away from that. That is my own conclusion, that I thought it's just better I do this piece separately. So, dialectical behavior therapy is a type of talk therapy for people who experience emotions very intensely, It's a common therapy for people with borderline personality disorder, but therapists provide it for other mental health conditions as well. Um, so there is a difference between DBT and CBT. I did CBT, and maybe, the facilitator, in my opinion, was very unprofessional in many ways. And I needed someone who was more objective, had a different kind of structure. But DBT was definitely what I needed. So, DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, is a type of talk therapy, psychotherapy. It's based on CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's specifically adapted for people who experience emotions very intensely. It could be anybody. And cognitive behavior therapy is a type of talk therapy that helps people understand how thoughts affect emotions and behaviors. Now, I did learn quite a bit from doing CBT. Now, I didn't learn the strategies that I needed to deal with my own instability, but I was able to understand some of the antecedents of, say, a meltdown or a certain behavior, whatever. Those things that creeped up, why it does that. So I'm not saying you have to do both. And I know the facilitator in the CBT group that I had was unprofessional. The group was not appropriate for me, and the type of therapy wasn't appropriate. But I did learn some things because we got handouts and readings, and I was able to refer from that. And dialectical means combining opposite ideas. DBT focuses on helping people accept the reality of their lives and their behaviors, as well as helping them to change their lives, including their unhelpful behaviors. So then the Cleveland Clinic goes on to state who it's for. It's for borderline personality disorder, self harm, suicidal behavior, post traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, eating disorders, depression, anxiety, and so on, and any other trauma related stuff. So, this conversation here makes me smile when people are saying how it's helped them change their lives, how it's helped them feel about themselves. Now, Katie Joy will say, well, I'm diagnosed with none of these above. No, I don't know what was above. Okay, because I'm looking, oh, wait. There are different stamps here. So it must have been this to this to this, but I'm not sure. So I can't really follow the conversation. In any event, they're saying here it says there's no such thing as NBPD. Okay. And there is narcissistic personality disorder, which this is making a reference to, in borderline personality disorder. Both of those issues are separate issues, but they are under the cluster B personality disorders according to the DSM 5, the fifth edition. Now, the mistake that Katie makes here, she's saying there is no such diagnosis. I'm assuming she's referring to Cheryl, um, saying, yes, there is, my boyfriend has it. So I think here she might be saying that there's no such thing as NBPD, narcissistic borderline personality disorder. Okay. Now, at first, when I read this, I thought maybe she's talking about um, there are cluster B personality disorders which have overlap. Well, narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorders, they are cluster B personality disorders. Now, Katie doesn't go into talking about it, but there are such diagnoses. as NPD and BPD. In borderline personality disorder, there has been some discussion of its validity, or if it's officially a diagnosable mental health disorder, and it is. In the DSM-5, in the text revision TR, it is. And it's treated by dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive therapy. Now, there's no, usually with these diagnoses, it's necessary, especially when prescribing medication for it. For for borderline, I'm not sure. I don't believe that there is a medication treatment for it. They usually say DBT and cognitive therapy and learning skills to deal with that. Okay. Um, I am on a mood stabilizer, but that is for the other BPD, which is not a personality, it's bipolar disorder, which I've always had. And I have one of the bipolar disorders. But that mood stabilizer does help in general, even with some of the emotional upheavals that I have with borderline, but it's not specifically treating my borderline personality disorder. That is something that is more of a cognitive thing I have to work on still, even after 2 rounds of DBT and implementing those strategies every day in my life when I can. And it's exhausting. There's some days I said, fuck it. I don't want to deal with therapy now. I don't want to deal with using my skills now. I just want to rest. I just want to be myself, you know? But so I think that there was some confusion about what this is at some point. But Katie Joy doesn't realize that in the DSM 5, according to this person, it does change. It does change. That's why they have text revisions. Okay. And borderline personality disorder is a diagnosed condition. And furthermore, it's part of the ADA expansion efforts to include people with mental health disorders, because historically it hadn't been for that. And in some communities, it's part of their individual ADA expansion. Um, I wouldn't say guide, but expanded protections. Okay. In an effort to make it more inclusive to different kinds of disabilities. So they do recognize it may not be recognized with getting Social Security, perhaps, but it is recognized in making some kind of accommodations for work or school, whatever. But usually you have to prove yourself. And the problem with borderline personality disorder is that it's so stereotyped, that there's so much discrimination around it, that um, there's so much discrimination that people have a hard time getting health care, being taken seriously. Or they're just saying, well, that person's a threat. She's out there. She's automatically going to cause problem. And I'm saying she generically and not anybody specifically. So it's important to have those protections, because people with borderline personality disorder deserve to have a long life, a fruitful life, a life that they want. There are a lot of people with borderline crying out for therapy. They can't get therapy. They can't be taken seriously. They aren't being taken seriously. It's not that they can't. It's just people won't take them seriously. We have a lot of healthcare inequity, and people really fail to understand what that means. And when there's such a failure, then how are people going to set up boundaries for themselves if they don't know what their loved one is going through, or what they themselves can tolerate or shouldn't tolerate? There has to be more understanding and more open discussion about that, and especially for the person with borderline, it's very painful. It's a very painful emotion. I'm telling you, it not only causes it not only I have a lot of emotional grief about being this emotional, but it also physically hurts me. I feel physical pain from it. Now, that could be from bipolar, because bipolar does the same thing. But I can feel that pain, a pain in my chest, the pain in my throat, the pain in my head when I'm going through an emotional crisis. So I don't know, this I thought, oh, Katie Joyce, she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about, personality disorders. Well, she doesn't. But I'm assuming it has to do with maybe this, that there's this thing that maybe it's narcissistic personality disorder, MPD, whatever. I don't know. But borderline does exist. Narcissistic PD exists. They're both classified as cluster B. There's no overlap, although there are therapists that say there's overlap. There's some similar things because they are cluster B. They are based on a certain criteria. They're based on certain criteria, but they are um, very different in terms of behavior. And yes, some people with BPD might have some narcissistic traits, but not all. Not all borderline people have that. Okay. Um, I looked at myself. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm narcissistic, but I don't have narcissism. I I don't. I'm classified as not even having narcissistic traits. Now, I was advised that there is a healthy level of narcissism. Now, in my borderline, it seems like narcissism because I'm so like self-absorbed and worried about what people think of me, but it comes from a different place, you know. But I still have to keep that in check. I still have to keep that in check because I can lose myself in myself, and it may look like I mean, I've been accused of being a narcissist, not by anybody in real life, but online when I've talked about my borderline issues. It's like, oh, you don't know. You don't know. You don't know what I go through. I take it like that. All right. So going back to this part of the conversation, I don't know. I'm assuming this is like 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Without a crystal ball here states, I've done therapy on and off for years. I've been formally diagnosed by a licensed psychologist through extensive testing. Now, I think this will be the second time here, she talks about not having any of the discussed personality disorders. I'm assuming she's talking about that. I have ADHD, anxiety, PTSD, and panic disorder with comorbid OCD, no personality disorders. Okay. Maybe Katie's self-diagnosing. A lot of people do that. Okay. I can't tell her what her diagnoses are. I'm just a layperson. Okay. It's possible. Now, there's a lot in this to unpack. Now, this is just a response. But this is a typical Katie Joy response when she's challenged on things, whether it's through her defamation suits, whether it's through the Garrison Brown reporting, and she got a lot of backlash through all of those things. And then, of course, anybody who is the center of attention, whether she makes them the center of attention, if it's not attention directly to her, and if she feels like she's not being sympathized for or cared about, she's going to make herself the center of attention. She needs to have that. Okay. But anybody can talk about their mental health stuff and still be valid, whether or not they self-diagnose or they are diagnosed by a professional. Now, Katie Joy says here, I've done therapy on and off for years. Like I said, I've been formally diagnosed by a licensed psychology through extensive testing. It was said by another content creator, and perhaps in their own country or own community, it's done differently. Here, my psychologist diagnosed me. The question of PTSD was something different. That was something with my psychiatrist, but my prescribing doctor and my psychologist work together as a team. Now, where I live and stuff, y- you know, it's important that you, you can't just get medication without having a psychologist. All right, you can't have cognitive, you can't get prescribed for something and not go through cognitive therapy, especially with some of this other stuff that she has. Okay. So I'm curious if she's being medicated for one or two of those things, how is she doing that by not having consistent therapy? Because here this indicates I've done therapy on and off for years. Okay, I've said that myself. And some of us are seeing our own words or phrases being used in Katie Joy's tapestry of making up some kind of identity for herself. But that's not an uncommon phrase on people either. So I can't say either way what that is. But it tells me that she's done it off and on, but she's not saying I'm in ongoing therapy. Now, I figured if she brought up her mental health challenges, she would say, but I'm being treated currently for these things. She just has these diagnoses, but she doesn't talk about follow up. You would think that she would, right? So it just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, and through extensive testing, what extensive testing? Well, ADHD probably, but that's I know that my one of my friends, she has ADHD, and she had to go through testing, but also the type of testing she had to do was she had to get formally diagnosed. She had to be treated and stuff for it. Um, but she had to do a particular test as well for her school because she was studying at the time because there was a particular subject she could not do um, as a result of that. They gave her an exception because of a disability, and her ADHD to her and to her clinicians was for her a disability. I'm not saying it's a disability because not everybody with mental health considers what they have as disabilities. So you would think she doesn't talk about extensive therapy. She talks about extensive testing. I had psychological testing done a long time ago. Not, not a very long time ago, but a long time ago. Okay. I didn't necessarily need it because for this span of therapy that I've been doing intensively for the last 7 years, over 7 years, almost 8 years, because they were able to observe my behavior. Because I mean, I don't hide it. I'm not in therapy to listen to myself talk or to get something. I'm in therapy because I had to get well. I knew I was heading for a train smash, and I had to do that. So, um, so they observed my behavior. My professionals observed my behavior when I would have meltdowns. I would have difficulty, um, managing those emotions. They were able to observe that behavior. Now, my psychologist can diagnose, and she has. I have a child who's a mental health therapist. She diagnoses. I mean, they can't prescribe. Either one can't prescribe. That's what a psychiatrist is for. Okay. But um, psychiatrists can make certain diagnoses. Even my own treatment team there is this opinion that my psychiatrist doesn't think I have borderline. I have borderline traits. That was my original, that was the original thought many years ago. But no, I have the full blown disorder. I said, because my psychiatrist doesn't see me as regularly as my cognitive therapist, you know? But like I said, my mood disorder, my bipolar, that treatment kind of overlaps with the borderline because there is no medication treatment for borderline that I understand. And believe me, I don't want to take any more medications. I'm taking enough. They're life saving. They help me live. But the cognitive therapy work, that therapy, having a therapist that is understanding, caring, doesn't gaslight, doesn't enable, you know, or anything like that, has been the most important factor here of me making better behavioral decisions. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I am doing the right thing, the right thing all the time. I'm not. I still have a long way to go. I have a lot to take accountability for myself and for others. It's a long process, but I can't just say here, well, I've been on and off in therapy, I've had extensive testing, but I have all these serious psychiatric conditions. Somehow I'm getting medication for it, but I'm not working on it. That doesn't make any sense. To me, that doesn't make any sense. I think Katie Joy, they're saying Katie Joy is drinking and all of that, and being her asshole self. Yeah, that's possibly true, but Katie Joy is a very insecure person. And any time when anybody gets attention for their illness, for their troubles, for their problems, and it doesn't work out the way that Katie Joy expects that to work out, and she doesn't get that attention for herself, that empathy and that sympathy, she she'll make up stuff around that. Now, that is a sickness. Now, with borderline, okay, what I have researched with borderline personality disorder, there are um, somatic disorders connected with that. Okay. Um, Hold on, I just want to pull this up here. I'm going to post these links so that you can see this for yourself. It's in the all right. So now some borderline people like myself experience somatic symptoms. So this is from grouptherapy.com. It's physical symptoms. These symptoms can manifest in various ways: gastro issues, pain, fatigue, bodily sensations. That's somatic. For individuals, the experience of somatic symptoms may be linked to emotional dysregulation, chronic stress, or heightened sensitivity to physical sensations. That, I think, is where my health um, anxiety stems. So, the next thing, okay, so there might sometimes there are those kinds of sensations. It's quite possible Katie Joy might be having some of those sensations, but a personality disorder, um, addictions are there. With the borderline, there are comorbid addictions, issues with addiction, and other things. And those addictions can be eating disorders, suicidal, sorry, not suicidal, um, and substance abuse. There is suicidal ideation, which is not an addiction itself, but there are those things. But the addictions part is one of those um, features of borderline personality disorder, or that emotional dysregulation. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because when we talk about the somatic disorders, um, that there is a comorbidity, according to the National Institute of Health, comorbidity between factitious and borderline personality disorder. Okay. And now we all know factitious disorder. Also, I don't have factitious disorder. I don't. That's clear. But I get the chills talking about it because it is a feature of borderline personality disorder. It's a comorbid disorder. And as we all know, factitious disorder, it can either, people can do that to themselves or they can do that to their children or family members for attention. And it's so factitious disorder, according to Cleveland Clinic, is a mental disorder in which a person acts as if they have a physical or psychological illness when they themselves have created the symptoms. Now, this is connected with somatic disorder somehow. People with this disorder are willing to undergo painful or risky tests to get attention or sympathy. Okay. So there's a factitious disorder that's imposed on the self, as I have described, and there's factitious disorder imposed on other persons or people. People with this disorder, the one factitious disorder imposed on another, according to Cleveland Clinic, people with this disorder produce or fabricate symptoms of illness in others under their care: children, elderly adults, disabled persons, or even pets. It most often occurs in mothers, although it can occur in fathers who intentionally harm their children in order to receive attention. The diagnosis is not given to the victim, but rather to the perpetrator. And you would think I have that because I have some extensive knowledge about it. Now, Katie Joy has talked about, she said in one of her videos, and I cannot find it. And I don't want to, I want to be careful because I don't know if this person really is a source of her pain, as she said, or not. And I want to handle it delicately because I don't know what happened. But she brought up that her father is worked in public health. So Katie Joy might have gotten some terminology or explanation from that, about things. I'm not sure if that is true or not. But she does appear to have a lot of understanding about certain medical facts and treatments and things like that. Now, there has been accusations that she has factitious disorder. I believe it was brought up in the FOIA request information that Nini received, that based on some of the harassment that Katie Joy allegedly experienced of people accusing her of this and that. I'm not sure. But there were no reports included of anything related to her child. So I don't have any proof that she has factitious disorder, but I do think that there is a connection. There's a possible connection with that if indeed some of the stuff that people are making their own connections about Katie Joy and how she's handled her child's health care is any indication of. It looks like that, but I don't know. And I don't want to make that accusation because I'm not in possession of those facts. It's a serious allegation to make. There are other people who have pieced that together for themselves based on Katie's own documented history of describing her child's healthcare struggles, and um, it in given Katie's emotional instability, that's quite possible that there is that situation going on, but I don't know. And I want to be very careful not to diagnose from my chair. I can't diagnose anything. All right. So, um, and the rest of this is pretty interesting conversation. Yeah, our immediate response to anything is being a major. See you next Tuesday. Well, if I had seen all of the conversation, yes. And I think that Katie is very dismissive of her own failing, seemingly failing mental health or emotional disturbance. Um, when she adamantly says she has no personality disorders, that's not what I see. I see that there is emotional dysregulation. I don't know if they would call it a personality disorder for her, but there is a lot of emotional dysregulation going on. Um, KJ is acting like a therapist, saying what a diagnosis is. Does she keep the current DSM of mental disorder or the fifth edition book at her computer? No, but if her father's was in public health, she would have that level of knowledge. But her knowledge is very superficial, and I I'm assuming that she's making that distinction, that reference was in distinct to that Katie Joy made that distinction between narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. But I think Katie Joy might be just referring to borderline personality disorder and not realizing that those are both clear diagnosis under the DSM-5 TR. Sorry, under the text revision. Um, and that even personality disorders are covered under some expanded ADA expectations requirements in the law. So, um, Katie acts like that, but Katie's superficial, and that superficiality, I think, is based on the fact that she has no clear identity. I wouldn't say it's a fact. It's based on my opinion that she has no identity of her own. Somebody made sure to destroy that at some point in her life. Something did that. I don't know what it is. Something was not developed or looked into. It's amazing to me that she had a career for as long as she did, given her instability. Not, I'm not referring to YouTube, but her previous career. I don't know anything about that work history. Maybe someone else has brought that up. Um, I don't know why she decided to do, why she transitioned from doing that. Maybe because her child was born and she needed to focus on him. But still, I don't understand that connection just yet. Um, but it's something worth looking into if it hasn't been looked into already. So, but on the surface, it looks like she's been doing this kind of consistently, but a lot of people with people with emotional dysregulation should be able to come on YouTube and express themselves and have their perspectives. But I have found that some of these people, um, this is their source of attention. This is where they can get their adoration, and I don't know what the appeal is to have that level of popularity, because it comes with so many negative consequences. It's not a place to get that kind of attention. Getting therapy and getting support that way by professionals or community organizations that help people, or group therapy, to get a real kind of validation that is meaningful, to work on oneself, to get that validation from themselves. I don't see what the mass appeal is, what the appeal is to have a mass audience, because that audience is a discerning audience. Yes, not everybody is that discerning. There are people who have emotional issues who look up to people on the internet and they fall prey to their scam. They fall prey, and it's not really their fault, because they get caught up in it. They want something bigger than they want to be a part of something bigger than they already are. They want to feel included and appreciated. They don't realize that they're good enough on their own. They're good enough as they are, and if they're not, then um, they either have to find ways or get help to find ways. And my sympathy really is with people who are crying out for mental health care but can't get it because they can't afford it. There aren't practitioners who'll deal with that. They don't have insurance. A lot of these people have borderline personality disorder, because I go in personality disorder circles. I watch things based on borderline personality disorder. And sometimes I have arguments with people about that. Um, but there are people crying out for help. And we have Katie Joy here who just thinks it's a joke. And I think that has more to do with her feeling like shit about herself and not wanting to concentrate on that. Her arrogance comes from her extreme insecurity. I mean, I'm just saying that from somebody watching her behavior. She's adapted a lot of other people's personality, their words, their things. I mean, listen, we influence each other in one way or another, but people like her or me, we are prone to um, kind of glomming on to certain ideas and things and making it into our own. Me, less likely now, because I have a clear identity. I've always had that identity. I've always been able to focus um, on my identity. I have a clear personality. I have a clear I have clear character. I have clear things. They're clear to me because I'm stopping myself from seeing myself as worthless, although I'm still exceptionally hard on myself. And I see so many other people making progress. I mean, I feel bad for people who want therapy. I don't feel bad for Katie Joy. I do see that she's heading for some dark times with her mental health. That makes me sad, in one way, because public health should be a priority. Her health is part of the whole public health, but she treats it as a joke. It's a way for her, it's a shield for her as well. When she's in trouble, she can hide behind those things, whether they're true or not, to garner sympathy. Meanwhile, she does have issues, and she does need treatment for those, I think, from my perspective anyway. Oh boy, this has been exhausting. So, like I said, I don't know the context of this entire conversation. I'm just taking bits out and just focusing on, because this is something that's been going on with Katie Joy for quite some time in general. So I probably don't even really need to know the context of this. I know that Katie just will make up stuff as she goes along to kind of suit the story she's telling. It changes because she has no consistency in who she is. And she will go back and forth. She will say someone's a friend, they'll be the foe the next, because she can't handle relationships. She becomes delusional about relationships. She can't let go of bad relationships, and she doesn't understand the reality of her own situation, or she's trying to avoid it, which she shouldn't, especially with having a cool son. And, she has her own things and she has the potential of doing a lot, but she wants to ruin people's lives. That is her aim. So I don't know what happened. Maybe I should start watching more of Suzanne's videos again, or older videos, to get some background. Anyway, I want to thank you for listening to this. It's long. I know it was triggering. I really appreciate it a lot. This is very difficult to make because it brings up some of my own stuff. But thanks again for listening. Take care. Bye bye.